finish the Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. That was the Electric Boys from the Ghost Ward Diaries. The name of that song was You Spark My Heart. And on the line right now is a guy that is very busy, whether it's with the Electric Boys or solo. He has projects from both coming out. He's supporting Record Store Day. He's a musician's musician, I would say, a guy that always is putting out music. It is the vocalist, Mr. Conny Bloom. Conny, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I am excellent, man. It's, as I was just saying before we started, man, I can't believe in all this time I have never crossed paths with you as a big fan, man. I the obvious records, the Funk-O-Matic, Carpet Ride, and for me it was more freewheeling, but I played the shit out of these records, man, and to never have crossed paths is just very odd. But glad to finally meet you, man. Yeah,
and the same. Obviously, I know about all the interviews and stuff that you've been doing over the years. So, but finally, well, that's good.
Exactly.
Better late than never.
No kidding. Well, Conny, as I said, you are a very busy guy. You have a brand new solo release called Game Set Bloom, and I guess Ghost Ward Diaries is not so new anymore, but it's still a relevant release for you. So you definitely are a guy that never stops writing and producing, man. And I guess I just have to ask, what keeps you so motivated to stay so busy?
I would probably say that it's a matter of if I'm not keeping busy, I'm not feeling as good.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. As long as I'm working, as long as there's something new, or as long as I've got something ahead of me to look forward to, then things are pretty good. You know what I mean? But when it stops and there's no tours, there's nothing booked, there's no recording to look forward to, then it's easy to, you get not depressed, but it's like you start thinking and in a negative way. As long as I mean, the best way to put it is that someone said, what's the best about, being a recording musician and touring musician and all that? Is it the live thing or the studio? And it's all great. But I said at one point that the best moment of all is like when you've done a gig that you're really happy about, that was really good. And then you go back to the tour bus, open up a beer or whatever you're drinking, and when the bus starts rolling and you know that there's going to be a gig tomorrow as well.
Sure.
That's like the best.
And the interesting thing too is if you didn't do well in the recording studio, then you wouldn't have those people there to give you that buzz in the live shows either, because the people obviously buy the records and learn the words and sing them back to you as you go, which is part of what fuels you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Certainly.
For sure.
Well, are you one of these guys that not performs but plays every day? Do you pick up a guitar every single day or write something every single day, or are you a guy that only does it, when it's time to be creative?
No, it's the first part. I think I always pick up a guitar every day, but just because it's lying around at home, and you fiddle around with it, or you might write a song, or you just like keep, trying to make sure you don't forget the little licks that you do or whatever. But there's always a guitar around, and I'm always playing more or less.
Sure.
But I'm not the kind of guy. I know a lot of people, sort of like all these songwriter or the pop teams, whatever, songwriters, when they team up and they like go to work,
right,
9 to 5 or whatever, and write. But I've tried that, but I don't. Usually there's not that great stuff coming out. I mean, I'm a lot more like the kind of that writes good stuff out of inspiration, and there can be like months where there's nothing happening, and then there's like one song that comes out, and all of a sudden there's 15.
Sure.
and then there's nothing. And every time there's nothing, you think that, okay, I'm over. There's never gonna be a song anymore. So it's more out of inspiration. It's like when there's nothing happening. It's like it's almost like you're walking around collecting inspiration or whatever, and then all of a sudden, finally, it all comes out, and there's new stuff.
Sure. Now, for you as a creator, I'm curious, just because you're literally the first person I think I've ever spoken to that does this. You record in 2 different languages. You know, you record in English and you obviously record in Swedish. Your latest solo record, Game Set Bloom, is in Swedish. Obviously, the Ghost War Diaries is in English.
Yeah.
How do you transition back and forth like that, especially where music, you know, at least my understanding of music is that it's kind of a constant idea. But for you, it doesn't seem like it is such a steady idea. It seems like you come up with some music and then you can apply whatever you want to it, which is a unique characteristic pretty much to yourself.
Yeah, I guess it must be weird for you. Like, but I mean, in Sweden, I think from the age of 9, I think we learn English. It's part of school, you know. It's not like we choose it either. It's you that's what you do. So and obviously after all these years of touring and stuff, I'm not saying my English is great, because it isn't, but I can easily speak English or Swedish and switch between the two. And like when I was touring with Hanoi Rocks, for instance, there was obviously a couple of the guys are from Finland, and some of the people in the crew were from Finland. So I can't speak Finnish. I should after 4.5 years with that band, but I guess I'm lazy. I didn't learn enough. I know how to order a beer, and that kind of stuff. But but someone else came into the bus at one point and like, how can you guys like talk to each other? Because there was all these 3 languages all the time.
Right.
That kept switching around, and obviously I only know 2 of the languages, but with Andy, for instance, he speaks he speaks Finnish, Swedish, and English, and it's just a natural thing. Sure. Writing, I mean, I always considered rock and roll being you know, that should be sung in English, basically. That has been my feeling about it. But then there has been a few artists and songs that in Sweden that has been in Swedish that I actually thought was really good. And then so one day when I came up with the idea, what would actually happen if I would sing in Swedish? What would it feel like? Would it be good or whatever? And then I tried it, and I ended up feeling that it was actually quite easy for me to write lyrics in Swedish, because it's my native tongue, I guess. So it's different because you guys got a lot more words to choose from, more what synonyms, I guess the word is in English. If you want to describe something, you have a lot more words to choose from.
Right. In other words, we never shut up.
But so it's more difficult like that to find words that rhymes or sounds good in Swedish like that. But on the other hand, it's a bit easier to just tell a story like straight from the heart, because it's my native language.
Sure. It is part of the reason that artists tend to lead toward using English instead of their native language. The fact that to have commercial success, it has to. I'll put it this way: America is selfish in that Americans will not accept anything that is not English, which is kind of tragic. I know I lived in Korea for a couple of years when I was in the service, and I heard a lot of great music that I knew would never translate to America, just because Americans will hear it and they'll be like, I don't know what he's saying, I'm done. You know, is that one of the reasons that for you that English is important to use, you know, on most of your recordings?
The main reason is that I grew up listening to, I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up with all the Little Richard and, you know, Chuck Berry and all that kind of stuff in the house. And then when I was 9, my first like real hero for myself that I like found myself, so to speak, was Alice Cooper.
Okay.
And there's been like, I mean, all the great bands from America and The Who and Hendrix and from, you know, lots of great bands from UK. Those were always my favorites. And I wanted, of course, as a kid or when you grow up, that's what you want to sound like and look like. So that was my inspiration. That's all there is to it. I never thought that I got to sing in English because it's more commercial, because it's more countries. I never even thought about it. It's like, that's how you do it. Rock and roll is English.
Right, sure. Yeah. Now, but ironically, the new release, Game Set Bloom, is recorded in Swedish, as well as was the previous release. Is that just because that's where you're most comfortable now, or have you maybe sort of made a decision that you're not going to market the solo material to America, or am I just reaching here?
Well, mainly it was a selfish thing, like I said, that I just thought to find new inspiration. And when I tried and when I started singing in Swedish, it opened up a huge door, it felt like. So all of a sudden there was a lot of other possibilities how I could write music and etc. So, I mean, for instance, if I would come up with a riff that would sound like, I mean, like a guitar riff that would sound like whatever, Led Zeppelin or anybody, and start singing in English, people would probably say, it sounds like Led Zeppelin. But if I sang in Swedish, it would be, it's a bit like Zeppelin, but it's different. Mm-hmm. You know, so it just because it's Swedish, it makes it more different. And for me, you know, as a writer, it's a bit, at least for the moment, it's interesting, you know, because it's a new way of working.
Sure.
But I could never give up English. That's I mean, rock and roll came from that's English, you know.
Right.
Chuck Berry, all the blues guys. That's how it was written in the first place.
Right. Certainly. Now, for you as somebody that is obviously extremely creative and can write a lot of music, how do you determine what goes where? How do you determine what to hold for a solo release versus what is definitively Electric Boys?
When I did the first solo album, that thought crossed my mind many times. I'm like, okay, what's gonna go where? But now I don't know when this happened, but now there's never any doubt. I know instantly if I come up with something that this is going to be for the solo thing or for the Electric Boys thing. Mainly, I would say that Electric Boys is a bit more, a bit harder, but more hard rock, more arena rock, whatever you want to call it, and the Swedish stuff goes more towards Cream, Hendrix, The Doors, more laid back. You know, not the big production with the overdubbed guitars and wall of sound. This is more like dynamic, laid back. So it's not something I'm struggling with now. I used to a little bit a couple of years ago.
Well, you're definitely struggling would not be the word, because you're creating great music, regardless of if it's solo or if it's Electric Boys. Conny, one of the things I've always said to people, because as I told you, I'm a huge fan of the early stuff. I'm also a big fan of the most recent stuff. The Ghost Ward Diaries has been in my player for almost 2 straight years. I mean, I really, really like that sound. But I think that your band, that the Electric Boys, one of the problems I think that happened for you guys was you guys were grossly miscategorized. I mean, you obviously got put into that hair metal bubble back in the day, but while I'm not comparing you musically, I think you guys suffered the same fate that played like a band like the Black Crowes at first, where they too were put into that bubble. And I think they just were so radically different that they were able to escape it. But I always thought that Electric Boys was miscategorized as a hair band. I thought you guys should have been categorized in the same vein as like an Aerosmith type of a band. Maybe not to that extent, but close. And you sounded very, very Steven Tyler-ish on a lot of the music. Do you think that you were miscategorized, or were you comfortable with the way it all played out, there in the early 90s?
I think we were pretty much in our own little bubble all the time, and things were going on around us, but we didn't pay too much attention to it. But I think the hair band thing, that's more like something I noticed afterwards when people, yeah. Like if one of our songs has been added to some playlist or whatever, and it's hair bands from the 80s or whatever. So I've noticed it like that. But when it was just, I mean, I had the the curly hair and stuff. But if I would have been around, like, I mean, some of my like fashion idols or whatever you want to call it. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to look like Keith Richards, of course, like all kids who are into rock and roll. But then I thought, oh fuck, I got my curly hair, I can never do that. And then I saw Mark Bolan, T-Rex and Ian Hunter. I'm like, okay, I do have a chance. This is a small chance here. You can have curly hair. So my whole, I mean, that's where I come from. If the band would have been around at the time with them, we would have been compared to that glam rock thing from England at that time, I guess. Sure. But just that, I mean, now we were around, and it was like later, and it was the whole Sunset Strip thing was happening, But what can I say? I mean, I'm happy we got recognized, and I think part of our sound and everything was that we were from Sweden, so we heard all that music, but we weren't in it. We were like on the outside looking in, and we could choose what we wanted to take into our music or stay away from. Because there was talk about, you guys gotta move to LA, you guys blah blah blah, do this and that. At the same time, people were saying you have a really unique sound, and I would always feel that I thought that was the reason we had a bit of a different sound, because we were like I said, in our own bubble over here doing music, So, but yeah, what else is there to say about that? It was great times anyway. I mean, there was a lot of fun. It was a really happening music industry at that time. Lots of money being spent on videos and shit, like too much.
Right. Certainly. Now, Conny, let's move forward to what's coming up. Very soon. You're releasing a couple of very limited edition singles for the Record Store Day promotions. You have the Lion's Roar, which is from Electric Boys, and then you have, there you go, there it is, and
that's being professional, right?
That's very pro. Look at that.
It was me. It was my manager.
and that's the Swedish one. Charlie, right? The solo release, which is, they're very limited. If I'm not mistaken, they're limited to 250 or 300 copies or something like that. It's a very limited release. And the interesting thing is, you're not a guy, whichever band you're in, that's ever really done a lot of covers, and yet here's a collection of covers for cover songs. What possessed you to kind of go that direction right now? Is it just something you wanted to do for fun, or did you have some close tie to these songs, or what possessed you to do these songs?
As far as the Lion's Roar, that song, we were gonna do a TV thing in Sweden. This was it 2 years, a couple of years ago anyway, and everyone that was was there had to do a cover version of something that had been on the Swedish charts on radio. So we listened through a lot of that stuff, and The Lion's Roar was one of the songs by First Aid Kit that I thought was really good. And I tried a version of it, just like a demo version of it. And we also did Dancing on My Own, which is a Robin track, and some other stuff. And that's the one that was picked. So that's what we did on TV. But somehow I kept remembering this and thinking that this could be a different, interesting version. So we recorded it when we did the Ghost Ward Diaries, and then just saved it. We just felt that, okay, we might need a song at some point. And then there was talk about Record Store Day. So okay, let's try mix it and see what happens. And then we needed a B-side, which ended up being Life's Been Good, the Joe Walsh song, which goes back to when we were in Abbey Road recording Groovis Maximus. So we did a cover of that after a couple of pints in the pub, and mainly as a it was not really a joke, but just mainly we had some time over and had, you know, if you're there, you might as well use it and have some fun. So that's very much like a fan thing. It could be, it's like what's it called? A flashback back to the Groovis Maximus days, basically.
And yeah, what's unique is, you know, you doing the Joe Walsh voice. You do it amazingly like Joe Walsh. You sound very, very in the pocket with that song, man. It seems like you were almost made to sing that song.
Interesting. And you know what's even more interesting, what's really interesting is that I mean, obviously I'm the lead singer and the other guys do backing vocals, not the drummer, or drummers. But in this version, we're actually singing one verse each.
Oh, really?
Which I know you can't tell, because when I heard it, I had to play back and think, is that me or is that Franco singing or is it Andy? For some weird reason, I guess it's because we had heard Joe sing him, so we were all trying to sound like Joe. So our voices ended up sounding quite similar. But yeah, we were actually singing one verse each, and yeah, it was just like I said, it was something that was fun.
Sure, definitely.
For the time being.
Well, Conny, obviously, man, you know, we're going through a crazy time around the world with this whole pandemic thing, and you know, I have to imagine, you know, with you right on the cusp of releasing a brand new solo record, this has to just completely suck. You know, I mean, does this kind of make this record almost become a lost record, or do you think that hopefully things are going to clear up to where you can get out and play some shows and promote, or where do you think this pandemic is going to leave you as far as pushing forward with Game Set Bloom?
Well, I'm old enough to know that I've done records before that's sort of like you release them, let them go, and they drop, and nothing happens. And then 10 years after, people go, "Oh, I really love that album." And like you said, you mentioned Freewheeling, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I mean, when that was released, the record company put a lot of money into it. We recorded it at Abbey Road, and things were great. And then when they released it, they just realized all of a sudden that, hang on a second, we don't have any money to put into promotion because we put all of it into the recording. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So, but still, a lot of people keep talking about that album and say, when are you going to play songs from the album live and blah, 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 you know? Mm-hmm. I know. It's a great album. It's out. It's not going to be forgotten.
Certainly. And you know, one of the things I think when you have an album like that too, that kind of goes away quickly, you know, initially, is it doesn't get overplayed to death. It's one of those things that fans, you know how fans are, you know, I'm sure, you know, even you're a fan of music yourself. We all gravitate toward the song that everybody else doesn't know. no matter what it is. So if it's a whole album of stuff that nobody else has heard, there's nothing better than being at a party and throwing in that disc and they're like, hey, that sounds familiar. What is that? And you tell them and they're like, oh, I never heard that. It's kind of like, yeah, I know you never did. You're not as big of a fan as I am.
Yeah. You.
Exactly. Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, but Connie,
it's also, I mean, for me, it's you always try. It's very difficult, but the challenge is to put out music that doesn't sound like everyone else. I think you don't want to be like jumping on bandwagons and try to be an imitator. It's more fun if you can come up with something a little bit different. So I mean, a lot of times when maybe it would have been good to get on a bandwagon or whatever, maybe it would have been more commercial and better. But I tend to be, like you say, it's like, okay, so that's what like we had. It was the first album was a bit funky, all that stuff, and then all of a sudden there was a lot of bands doing that. And obviously then it's like, okay, maybe they've heard a bit of what we're doing, and maybe this means we're part of something that's good, so let's continue. No. Okay, let's fuck the funk and play some hard rock. And that's when we did Freewheelin'.
Right.
But who's to say, maybe that was a bad idea to do it that way, but it's just not fun. If there's too much music that sounds that way, then there's what's the reason for me to put it up?
Right. Yeah, and what's the reason for the fans to buy it when they bought it from somebody else, that did something similar? So, yeah, that makes total sense. Well, Connie, lots of music from you out there. People should definitely check out. Game Set Bloom is the latest from Conny Bloom. The latest, it's not quite new anymore, but it's still fresh, and it's a great, great listen. I cannot tell people enough to listen to the Ghost Ward Diaries from the Electric Boys. And I tell you what, Connie, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from their release. Since you obviously have a few to choose from, why don't you pick a song from any of the most recent releases? Maybe tell us a quick story about it to wrap this one up.
This is difficult. First of all, should it be from Electric Boys or from my solo stuff?
Why don't you pick one of each? We could do both.
Okay. My manager is here. My manager is asking.
He's saying, promote the new stuff. Promote the new stuff.
Okay, but anyway, I mean, obviously this is the Lion's Roar is the song we talked about, which is the First Aid Kit song that comes out on Record Store Day. Right. Which obviously have been moved forward, right? To what, June 20 or something like that. But these are coming out now anyway.
Okay.
And I think it's on Saturday, I think, which is the 18th or something like that. Sorry, I might be mistaken, but so maybe that one from Electric Boys if you want to play.
Okay.
And then this is like the solo thing in Swedish, so maybe we should do an instrumental track. So
no.
There is an instrumental track which I actually really like. Let's do that one. It's Gånglåt från Kärrträsk. It's the last or whatever you say.
Okay.
It's an instrumental song that I think it has a little bit of Swedish folk music in it, but it goes into Frank Marino and Jimi Hendrix territory at the same time.
Awesome.
Let's do that one.
All right. Well, let's play some Conny Bloom music right now. It's Electric Boys and it's Conny Bloom. So check it out. It is a lot of Conny Bloom right here on your Classic Metal Show.